No more ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Conor Skehan, who is, as I say, head of the Department of Environmental Planning at DIT. I usually embarrass him by saying how he's inspired me over the past few years, but it's dreadful when people introduce you that they're looking for too much. But Conor has been a central inspiration in the work that we've been doing. Conor.
It's almost exactly a year ago since we spoke to many of the people around the table here. I was very anxious to pick up the threads from where we left off there and give as little repetition as possible. I hate seeing dumb animals suffer, and quite a few of you around the room have heard that presentation 3 or 4 times, so I'm not doing it to you again. Relax. Talking about this. It's the month of January. There's the two-headed Janus god looking forward and backwards at the same time. It's a good time to consider where we are, and as John Ratcliffe has rightly said, it's a terrible pity to waste a crisis. The crisis isn't just the global one. The global one is giving some momentum and concentration to the crossroads that we're at in Dublin and in Ireland in particular. And it's that I want to focus on and to just lay out what the choices are. Remember, Galileo didn't recant because he was tortured. He was just shown the instruments of torture. And what I want to do today is to look at some of the paths we could go down that would be dreadful, so that we're aware of what the potential there is for going wrong. And we're at that cusp. We're going to pass through a period, probably in the next 5 years, where we'll set down a series of choices that can't be undone. And there's a very extreme set of directions in where we can go. So I want to start off by looking at the absolute facts of what's going to change. This is the only set of slides that have anything in common with the previous set of talks. And just for any of you who weren't at it, one of the things we drew attention to was one of the big things that will happen in the next 5 years, or in the next 20 years in Ireland. This was a map we showed everybody of the value systems all over the world, and that the set of value systems that drive what people do in Ireland are about to enter a period of profound change. And that change will move. And it's a very predictable pattern, as I pointed out to many of you, over and over the world, where countries, Ireland is way down here, the rest of Western Europe is up there, the United States, the English-speaking world is there, Ireland is down beside places like Puerto Rico and Nigeria, in terms of the attitudes and values that drive people. And what always happens is as countries become wealthier, is they rapidly go up that trajectory. I can't tell you what the values the children of us in this room are going to have. All I can tell you is they're going to be profoundly different from us. So that's one fact about the future. And that fact will change what they think is important. This is the elephant in the living room. Brian Hughes is going to speak at length and with great knowledge about the change of Irish population distribution. But the fact is, going out into the future, demographically, there's only one show in town here in Ireland. That has proven to be an immensely unpopular thing to say. At meeting after meeting, the length and breadth of the country, this joke has been taken very seriously. We have had newspaper headlines from the Taoiseach himself condemning the study, as if the study were a plan, saying that this is what should happen. The reality, however, is that whatever particular type of lipstick we put on this pig, this is the reality going out into the future. Ireland has no future without Dublin. The problem is, and the challenge I'm going to leave all of you here in the room, is that Dublin has no future except as a region. And that's the big crossroads we're at today. That's what we have to get right in the next 5 years. If we don't get that right, we lose the whole thing. And not just us in Dublin City Centre, or Dublin City Council, or even the Dublin region. Ireland Inc. loses if people in this room and people in the neighbouring authorities don't get their act together. We're stuffed. Some of the changes will happen anyway. This is the drift of demographics. That's the pattern of what Ireland will start to look like by 2015. It doesn't matter how many King Canutes we get to sit on how many beaches telling the tide to stay back. The girls who have had the babies who will live in these houses are already among us with their little pink ovaries just waiting to have babies. And that's what they're going to do. The planning acts have shifted the way we've dispersed ourselves out in the landscape a little bit since 1964, but very little. Brian will talk about the inevitability of the demographic direction in which we're working. And we are not currently planning for this Ireland in our National Spatial Strategy. We are doing everything we can to stop this happening. The National Spatial Strategy explicitly says it's for balanced regional development. And for those of us who are losing it on top, that's the same with this kind of denial, where we do this to get the hair to cover the bald spot. That's what this is about. The National Spatial Strategy is telling people in Mayo, is telling people in Limerick, is telling people in West Cork that Ireland has the same set of futures for somebody in Allihies as they have in Athlone, as they have in Aylesbury Road. That's not true. They're different futures. They're not better or worse futures, but they are dramatically different. And if we accept that it's dramatically different, the way we plan Ireland will mean having to face up to the fact that we are currently putting infrastructure in profoundly wrong places, and we are about to do even more of that in even worse places. That's all I'm going to say from that previous study. It's out, it's published, you can read the book. As it said, this is our springing point. Now there's a difference between those kinds of talks I've been giving to date, talking about those forces of change, to the one I'm going to give today, which is about what will actually happen on the ground, which is quite a different thing. So I'm going to look at this next in terms of what's going to happen. Look at this. We have to be honest with ourselves and have a look at what could go wrong. And you know why? One of the most tragic things about cities and city planning and regional planning is that cities can fail. In fact, they usually do. The real trick is to get them to work. And cities that fail condemn not just 1.5 or 2 million people, but 1.5 or 2 million people for 2 or 3 or 5 generations to living way below their capacity, as if somebody had cut off the oxygen supply to this room. I'm going to try and spell out what the choices are, and as always, I am not a planner who says, this is the plan. I'm a planner who says, here's a range of ways it might go. Planners do not have a monopoly of truth on knowing what future we could or should have. A region will collectively decide from a marketplace of values as to what type of future we can all live with. And the planning profession has got to step up to the plate and start to realise it is a servant to that process. It doesn't lead it. But the other part of that process is the likes of the Chamber of Commerce, the likes of the political groups, stepping up to the plate as well and participating fully in the process in the open way that's necessary.